A genuinely crazy Week 7 is in the books, whether it was the last London game, whether it was the Broncos coming back in the fourth quarter with over 30 points, or whether it was the off between Joe Flacco and Aaron Rodgers. It was a huge week, and we are now over halfway through the regular season for fantasy football. So, waiver claims are more important than ever. In this video, I'm going to be looking at the most important waiver claims heading into week 8 for you and your fantasy teams. If you like content like this, please consider liking and subscribing. But let's get into it with the first claim, and that's going to be Oronde Gadsden, the tight end of the LA Chargers. And this is going to be the first name in every article, every video that you watch, to be honest, every tweet that you see on X as well. Gadsden absolutely blew up this week, ultimately in a loss to the Indianapolis Colts, but exploded for over 150 yards and a touchdown. Also has seen 17 targets across the last 2 weeks, but is only 11% rostered on Sleeper. Gadsden, even if you have a tight end, needs to be the priority target in any format, basically, right now. There is a huge opportunity in LA for a tight end to emerge, and we'd spent a lot of the offseason thinking, is it going to be Will Dissly? Is it going to be Tyler Conklin? The answer is Gadsden. He is the tight end 1 on the team. This is clearly the case. When you have a look at the targets per route run across the last couple of weeks, it has been an incredible number for Gadsden, who also paced the other tight ends in snaps, both last week and obviously this week just gone with a monster performance. Now, I'm not that confident in Gadsden being an every week tight end 1 because there are a lot of mouths to feed in this offense. It's actually been a struggle for Keenan Allen, Lab McConkey and Quentin Johnston to consistently perform at the same time. So I'm not confident that Gadsden is going to suddenly become the alpha in this offense, but when you have a performance like you have yesterday as the tight end 1 on the week, we have to pay a lot of attention to this. Next up, at 9% rostered, we have Brashard Smith. Now, if you've been following my content at all, you know Brashard Smith was my guy this offseason, and I'm delighted to see him starting to become a bit more relevant. Now, obviously, the caveat here is that the Chiefs pulled their starters midway through the third quarter because they were completely blowing out the Raiders, who had one of the worst offensive days I've ever seen, which meant that Brashard Smith saw a huge amount of work into that fourth quarter when they didn't need to do anything. But he still led the team in rushing attempts and also led the team in receiving yards. And that was the case earlier on. That wasn't just something that he was being fed later on into the fourth quarter when the starters had been pulled. Brashard Smith has shown the most explosivity of any running back on the Kansas City Chiefs, and I still maintain that this breakout game is coming. His targets per route run have always been incredibly high, even if he's not seeing the field that often, showing that when he is out there, the Chiefs want to be using him. Brashard Smith is clearly a more explosive option than Isaiah Pacheco or Kareem Hunt, and I think this increased workload on the ground, especially in that fourth quarter, showing an ability to trust him to actually get the ball on the ground as opposed to through the air, means that that breakout game is going to come relatively soon, and when it does, I am going to be victory lapping my way around the entire world. Next up, and sticking with rookie running backs, it's been entirely rookies so far, but we have Kyle Monangai of the Chicago Bears. Now, the Bears had an incredible win last night, and it was almost entirely on the ground, which was really a surprise to see, with DeAndre Swift finishing with over 100 yards and a touchdown, and Kyle Monangai himself carrying the ball 13 times for 81 yards and a rushing score. Monangai is the clear RB2 in Chicago, something I got incredibly wrong this offseason. I actually ended up buying Roschon Johnson in a lot of places. He is clearly playing behind DeAndre Swift, who is having a little bit of a resurgence these last couple of weeks, mostly because they are starting to change the way that they utilize him. But Monangai is the clear RB2 in this offense and is starting to show some juice in his own right. We know that Ben Johnson likes to pair running backs together. Now, Monangai and Swift are not going to be Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, and people should stop referring to Monty and Gibbs anytime multiple running backs see the field, because they are a very unique case. But at just 11% rostered, Monangai is someone you need to be looking towards. He is likely to have standalone flex value for the rest of the season at this point, and if DeAndre Swift were to go down, he could very easily see himself getting an RB2 level workload. If you're enjoying this video and if you like content like this, please consider subscribing to the channel, drop a like, leave a comment, all of that normal stuff. There's so much more exciting stuff coming your way, including my Off the Wire series where I'm turning a dynasty team that I picked up off of waivers into a championship roster. Check it out and check out everything else on Fancy Pancake. Kayshon Boutte of the New England Patriots is over 40% rostered, but someone you need to be paying attention to if you haven't been already. He is currently the wide receiver 29 on the season in half PPR and managed to score another touchdown this last week, totaling 4 on the season. Now, the New England Patriots receiving depth chart is a little bit complicated to try and figure out. Stephon Diggs seems to be ascending to that alpha receiver role as he starts to get a little bit healthier. Carl Williams has been nowhere to be seen, and Boutte has been the clear wide receiver too. Now, a lot of his performance so far has been running incredibly pure on touchdowns, and that is unlikely to continue. But with Drake May playing MVP caliber football, a player like Boutte who can get open in the end zone and who can also break off deep receptions down the field is someone you need to be looking at, particularly as there are huge bye weeks coming up, and he seems to be a relatively reliable receiver. Going from someone who's been quite reliable to someone who has been incredibly unreliable, and I'm so excited to tell you his stat line from yesterday. 4 targets, 4 receptions, 44 yards, and a touchdown. And Noah Fant is also 4% rostered. It is just all lining up perfectly. Now, Noah Fant is someone that I've been relatively interested in, but obviously with Mike Gesicki on the team, the workload is being shared too much around. But with Joe Flacco coming in to lead the offense, there is just a bit more upside in what's happening in Cincy, and with Mike Gesicki now on IR, Noah Fant is the clear starting tight end. The Bengals will always need a third receiving option outside of Chase and Higgins, and with their defense as bad as it is, they are going to be passing the ball a ridiculous amount. Fant is not going to be an every week starter, but could see some streaming upside, particularly with Flacco taking the helm in this offense. And do you know what? I'm going to go straight into the next one. No cuts and edits between this one because it is Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco is just 15% rostered in leagues on Sleeper. Probably saw himself getting cut after he was obviously demoted. He was benched in Cleveland for Dylan Gabriel, but he is going to start probably the rest of the season in Cincy, has incredible weapons in front of him and matches up with them really nicely. We saw obviously one of Jamar Chase's best games actually of his career, not even just of the season so far, in the win against Pittsburgh, and T. Higgins had a nice game as well. With Flacco's ability to throw the ball deep down the field and also his fuck it, I'll chuck it attitude, he is going to be a, mid-range QB2 while he's in Cincinnati. You can't really be much worse with those wide receivers ahead of you. That's really pointed at Jake Browning, who was significantly worse with those 2 wide receivers ahead of him. But Joe Flacco, with buys coming up, is someone you need to be looking at and someone that could quite easily be quite relevant down the stretch. Xavier Legette has been a really difficult player since his time in the NFL, really disappointing as a first-round pick last year, but just had a career day leading the Panthers in receiving and getting the second receiving touchdown of his career to date. Now, he's only 13% rostered, and one of the most exciting things for Legette is that he did this once Jalen Coker had returned from IR. I'm not fully convinced that this is Legette completely putting everything together, but the physical tools have always been there. And I said in the offseason, with Tetairoa McMillan coming in as the prototypical alpha outside wide receiver, that would give more opportunities for Legette to be used horizontally, which is where I think he's better suited. So pay attention to this one. This could be of any importance if Legette is starting to match his performance with the physical tools that we know he's always had. And finally, Parker Washington of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, this receiver is just 2% rostered, but saw double-digit targets last night for the second time on the season. Trevor Lawrence actually likes throwing the ball Parker Washington's way. You'll know if you're a Brian Thomas Jr. or Travis Hunter owner how annoying it gets when the ball's in the air and it comes down with Parker Washington. Now, Washington, alongside Brian Thomas and Travis Hunter, until last night when Travis Hunter was absolutely fantastic, he struggled with drops as well. But the crucial thing here is that he was already a big part of this offense, functioning normally as the wide receiver 2, as Travis Hunter sort of got acclimated to playing wide receiver in the NFL. So he was already on the field. Brian Thomas Jr. went down with an injury last night. I say last night, last afternoon for me, and yesterday morning probably for a bunch of you if you're watching on the West Coast. But Brian Thomas Jr. looked like he dislocated his shoulder, in which case Parker Washington is going to be the biggest benefactor. Now, I know it's not an offense you want to buy too many shares into, but if you're heading into the massive bye weeks, getting the starting wide receiver 2 on an offense that throws the ball a ton is something you need to be looking at.